Hey there, it's the Jew from the Chew on This podcast, letting you know you can leave comments, questions, and suggestions a number of ways. Reviews and comments are appreciated on iTunes and YouTube, and you can check out our daily postings on Facebook. Our Twitter feed and Instagram is at Chew on This Pod, and of course, as always, you can email us directly at chewonthispodcast@gmail.com. So there you have it, folks. Short of a bat signal or an Avengers card, there's all the ways you can let us know how big of a nerd you truly are. Enjoy and chew on this podcast. Welcome to episode number 40 of Chew on This, a Nerds United podcast. I'm BJ.
Vic, before we get started with our review of Harry Potter, I just want to give a shout out to Larry Spikes for being our 100th like on Facebook.
Awesome.
Thank you, Larry. Yeah, big deal for
Thank you.
us.
Yeah, thank you, Larry, very much. So number 40, dude, that's pretty awesome. We're getting up there.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that we've gotten, what is this, 8 months now we've started this? We've been doing this?
Yeah.
Okay, so it took us 40 episodes, but this is our first book review, which is kind of weird, I guess. And it's actually not even really a book; it's a play. So this is our review of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and it's actually a play. And major spoilers, so go read it if you
Yes.
haven't done so already.
Yeah, I imagine we're going to spoil this. We have to spoil this, right? I mean, there's so much going on in it. I think just giving a really basic review would be kind of boring.
And it's Harry Potter too, so
Yeah, Harry Potter, was a pretty big deal for me. Like, I don't think I actually started reading the books until the fourth one had come out. I might have mentioned that before, but a friend of mine tried to get me to read him, and I was just refusing. I was kind of like one of those people that was like going against the grain. Like anytime something popular would come up and people would just be talking it up, I'd be like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. Same thing with like iPods. I was like, I'm not doing this just because everyone else did. And then I eventually bought one, and I was like, okay, this is cool. But Harry
I
Potter
think I
is
saw
the same.
yeah. I'm not. I don't think I thought it was like stupid. Probably because like there's that like South Park episode where they make fun of people who play Harry Potter while they're playing Lord of the Rings. I figured it was like that. So I saw the movies first, the first two movies, and then before the third or fourth movie came out, that's when I started reading them heavily. Um, so it was one of the very few things that few books I should say that I got into quickly, and I couldn't stop reading them once I started.
Yeah, that was the same with me. I remember I went to my 10-year high school reunion, and one of my friends had that book on him, the first book. And he's like, you got to, no, he had the fourth book on him. And he's like, have you read these? And I was like, no, I don't really care for that. And he's like, no, you don't understand. Like, these are really well written. Like, yeah, they're children's books, but they're really well written. And I think the more you read them, the more the books, every time a book comes out, it gets more and more adultish. And so I was like, whatever. And then I had a trip to Alaska come up, and I needed something to read. So I was in the bookstore and I saw him, and I'm like, all right. So I bought the first book. I read it I read the whole book on the plane. Like, I finished it on the flight from San Francisco to Alaska. I finished it. So when we landed in Alaska, it was a red eye flight. So we got there in the morning. I was like, where's your nearest Barnes and Noble? So I bought 2 through 4, and then I read 2 and 3 really quickly. And then the fourth one, I just kind of took my time. And then I had to wait like everyone else for the next book. So,
I mean, that's the great thing about Harry Potter, right? Is if you were a child reading Harry Potter, you grew up with Harry Potter, which makes sense. And what I loved about the books around that time frame when Harry Potter was pretty popular, that Dan Brown book came out with what was it? The first, the major one, the Da Vinci
The
Code.
Vinci Code, yeah.
And I remember reading the Harry Potter books and then going to read Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, and I could not believe how much more sophisticated the writing was for a quote unquote children's book compared to Dan Brown. Like Dan Brown, like there's nothing sophisticated about his writing or anything difficult about his writing, or I don't want to use the word eloquent, but
Yeah.
that's not. I mean, but there's a style that J.K. Rowling has, and it's really great and very descriptive and very beautiful, especially the dialogue and her thoughts. But when I'm reading, and then I switched to Dan Brown, I couldn't believe that if you gave me like a paragraph that didn't describe what either book was from either author, I would have thought that J.K. Rowling was Dan Brown writing the Da Vinci Code and like reverse the role because that's how much easier of a read Dan Brown was.
Yeah,
But
I
anyway,
I read up on her, and she has a really fascinating story. I don't need to go into it because all the Potter people know her story, but she really, unlike George Lucas, she doesn't have a lot of plot holes in her stories. Like she had that sucker mapped
no,
out,
yeah, it's
from beginning to
crazy. I
end.
mean, yeah, I mean the equivalent of like the that I think of when I think of Harry J.K. Rowling is the writers for the Breaking Bad,
Oh yeah,
like and for a TV show that's really unheard of. But I
yeah,
don't want to get too much into the weeds about all that stuff. I want to move on to this because I powered through this in like 2 nights. So
yeah. Me too.
I was excited for a Harry Potter book slash play. So initial thoughts right now because I was really curious to hear your thoughts first because I had an inkling that you didn't like it.
Um, I'll say this: when I first started reading it, I didn't like it. I was like, I didn't like where the characters ended up. I didn't. I had a real problem with Ron. um,
Okay.
I yeah, that was my initial reaction. But as soon as like I kind of got into it a little bit, I started to enjoy it. I don't think this is Shakespeare. I was actually not happy. I knew going into it what it was. It was a play. A lot of people online were upset because they're like, I didn't know it was a play. Like, this is stupid. And I was like, wow. So, knowing what it was, it allowed me to kind of like shut that part of my brain off and go, it's not a normal book. It wasn't written by J.K. Rowling, by the way. It was written by some other person. I forgot his name. Um, so, I think she had some input in it. Um, but I think overall, I thought it was okay. I thought it was decent. I thought it would be a lot worse than originally thought because I read a lot of the reviews. I didn't know what the plot was. I just read a lot of views how so many people were disappointed in it. But the more of those reviews I read, the more I realized like they're bashing it for the wrong reasons. It's like I know it's a play. I know it's written by someone else. Okay, fine. And I went into it knowing that, and then actually, someone enjoyed it, and it was a really quick read. It's not like it took me 2 months to read like the other books, and I read to it really fast and thought, okay, yeah, it's not bad. Also, okay, I'll just say one last thing, then you can say your initial reaction. When I was done with the book, I was like, this was like Harry Potter meets Back to the Future 2. That's what it kind of felt like to me.
Yeah, yeah. You kind of nailed it right there. With that, I was thinking Back to the Future as well, but like if the beginning part of Back to the Future 2 um, kept playing over and over again with different versions of what was happening to the future.
Yes.
Like each time something happens, there's a new movie in Back to the Future, basically. But in this one, every time they flip the time turn or something, the immediate impact is rippled through time, and
With the
when they get back.
little bit of butterfly effect too. Like a little bit
Yeah, a
of
little
that.
bit,
But
a little bit. So my initial reaction was when it got really down and dirty into the story and the main plot, when especially the part where Severus shows up, I I I was really emotional reading that.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm not even joking. I'll call me whatever you want to call me, but I got emotional when Severus showed up, and I couldn't believe while I was reading it that it wasn't J.K. Rowling that didn't write this part. I'd be surprised if she didn't write this part actually, because it felt like Severus. The
Yeah.
whole scene about so basically in this. So, all right, you know what? Let's go back to the plot a little bit and just
Okay.
give an overview. Um, Basically, what happens is it's how many years? Like 20 years later, something
So
like that.
I think it begins where the Deathly Hallows ends, and then it's a matter of like 4 years go by in the story, like pretty quickly, like 4 years go by, and then the story, then you kind of like you're at present time when all the time turner stuff starts happening, but there's
Yeah,
like
there's a
4 years go
lot
by.
of there's a lot of like the other thing I was reading. The other initial reaction when I was reading this was that it's you know what I never actually gave my initial reaction. Um,
Okay.
I liked it. I liked it. I had a hard time getting into it in the beginning.
Yeah.
I did not like it in the beginning, but the things that I loved about it, I think it was like when I really started to love it was when they started messing with time really badly, and the peak for me again was when Severus showed up.
Mm.
That was by far my favorite. When it was the darkest in the entire play, that was my favorite part.
I think so
When
too. I think that was
yeah,
mine too. It
um,
was unexpected and it was
yeah,
really well done. And yeah, we'll go into that when we go into all the characters and stuff. We'll get to that, what
yeah,
happens there. But yeah, so your initial reaction is you liked it. It was a little slow going in the beginning, and then you ended up liking it.
yeah.
So
When they started doing when they like I love things that mess with time or go back in time or go in the future, all that stuff. Anytime it's done really well, like that's why I loved a lot of the Flash these past couple of seasons because it's
yeah.
messing with time. I love Back to the Future, of course. I love Days of Futures Past, one of my favorite comic
Hmm.
books, let alone one of the better comic book movies ever made.
What about Time
Um,
Cop? What about Time Cop with Van Damme?
I actually did like that movie.
I liked it
It's probably
too.
my favorite. It's probably my favorite Van Damme movie, and it's really underrated as a as a time sci-fi movie.
Yeah,
I thought it was really cool.
I really
There's
enjoyed.
another one too.
I really liked Looper.
Yeah, that Looper's good too. Um, what are the really good time movies are there? I
There's
don't know,
probably
but
yeah. Those are the big
yeah, we're
ones.
probably forgetting. Yeah, those are some. So I loved it when it was the darkest. I don't know why, but or the
Well,
darkness had nothing to do with it. It had everything to do with Severus and Hermione and Ron.
yeah, you realize though that they did the time thing before, which I think is still their strongest Potter movie. Is the third one, the Prisoner of Azkaban. Was I feel still like their Wrath of Khan, their Empire Strikes Back, if you will. I went back and watched all 8 movies again recently before I started reading the book, and visual I'd like the first two are pretty basic. I mean, they follow the books perfectly, and anybody could have went in and directed that. I mean, it was pretty standard. But when the third guy came in, he did stick to the book, but he changed the aesthetics of it. He made it look more modern. He changed the look of things, and
Well,
also
that's when Christopher Columbus was no longer directing
right.
um, the books.
He
I
only
mean
did the
the
first. He only
plays,
did the
the
first two.
movies.
Yeah. But that third guy
Right.
came in and he kind of changed the aesthetics of it. Everything looked different. Everything was and that was my favorite. I think Harry Potter movie out of the 8. And so
That was Alfonso. I can't say his name.
Alfonso
Cuarón.
Cuarón, yeah, he did Gravity. That movie Gravity, that was pretty damn
Right.
good.
He has. If you look at his other books, oh, I'm sorry, not his other books. Jeez, I keep saying that. His other movies, he's got like a very darkish type of feel to his movies. Like he did, after that movie, he did Children of Men as well.
Oh, that's
Um,
right. He has
yeah,
really good, like, I don't know, his visually. I just like I like his style. But um,
that
so
was when
yeah,
it was noticeable. Like as you could tell that it was starting to. I mean, that book alone, not Chamber of Secrets, it was Prisoner of Azkaban. When that book came out and you read that book, you saw a shift in the book that it
yes,
was starting to get darker. Things were just about to start tipping over, and the kids who were growing up who were reading the books. And again, I can't stress it enough that if you grew up reading the Harry Potter books, it didn't matter that it got darker. It didn't matter that people died because you were getting older yourself.
right.
But like so,
Kind of
anyway.
envy those kids, darn it.
Yeah,
But
I know. I mean, Harry Potter. no matter who wants to say whatever, it's a children's book. It's a damn good series.
Yeah, it is pretty damn good. So let's before we really dive into the plot, I just wanted to go over quickly over some of the characters that are featured in it, and I'm sure I'm missing some. There was a lot of like secondary and third rate characters, but we have Harry Potter, of course, which we find out. I don't think he's an Auror, right? He just works for the Ministry of Magic. Like, does he go after evil wizards or I don't remember.
I forget his title.
Yeah, I
He
don't think
runs.
he's an
He
Auror,
runs. I
though.
think he. No, I think he runs that department, like the law enforcement department or something like that. I can't remember
Okay.
his exact title.
But okay, so the second one is Ron. I was really disappointed in his story, although it kind of makes sense. I mean, he always seemed like he was a lazy bum to me anyway. But like, he ends up running the joke shop, right? Does he inherit it from his brothers or something, or he's running it
Well,
by himself?
brother. Well, brother, because the other one died.
Oh, that's right. So there's only one twin left, older twin.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it just seemed like a waste to me. I'm like, really? Like you went through all that shit, now you're running a joke shop? Like, all right.
Well, I mean, that was something he always wanted too. Like he was always jealous that his brothers got their own business and stuff like that. So
I
a very
figured by
popular
now,
business
though,
model,
after
too.
like 20 years of marriage, I figured Hermione would have been like later loser because like she ends up being the freaking Minister of Magic, which actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Um,
Ginny is an Auror, right? Or
I
is she?
I don't remember. She's not a housewife. I don't remember
No.
what she does either. Gosh, I just read
Well,
this thing a week
judging
ago. I
by
don't remember.
judging by our descriptions of the characters, it sounds like we didn't read the play at all.
And like I don't even remember what Draco does either. But his son is featured in it prominently as Scorpius, who actually ends up being Harry Potter's oldest son's friend, and his oldest son is named after the two wizards that he admired, Albus Severus Potter, which ends up being, I think if I were guessing right, he would be the protagonist of the story, correct, or at least the closest thing to it.
Yeah, it almost feels like there's two stories, or there's two protagonists in the story, um, which is a little weird because you really don't know who the cursed child. Like they say it, but it's. I think they say the cursed child is Scorpius, but it's really not. It feels like all three. It's actually. I think it could be. It's like either Harry Potter, Albus, or Scorpius.
Or Delphi Diggory, who ends up being somebody else at the end of the book.
Right.
Uh, yeah. So then you have Rose is the Weasley's daughter, and was like friends with Albus. Albus seems to me like
She's like what would happen if Hermione never got made fun of in the first Harry Potter.
right.
Like if she didn't get made fun of by Ron or whatever and started crying, and Ron and Harry didn't go save her or whatever, it seems like that's what Rose would have. That's what Hermione would have turned out to be, because Rose is kind of a bitch.
She is. She's like the popular chick or something like that. She doesn't give a shit. She's just
She's
like
got
doing her own
like
thing.
she's got all of like Hermione's stuck upness, but times 10.
Totally. Um, we learn of someone named Craig. He kind of features a little bit prominently, but then he's murdered by somebody. Moaning Myrtle actually makes a cameo, which I thought was kind of cool. And I think one of the ghosts, I think Peeves, makes a cameo. Um, Severus Snape, man, definitely my favorite part of the book because it just kind of not like it came out of nowhere, but I wasn't for whatever reason like expecting that. And then when the scene come up with him, I was like, "Oh my, this is genius! This is so
And they
cool."
got better. They got better afterwards.
Yes, them having
Voldemort doesn't really make much of a cameo in it. He just is a sound. He's just like an audio clip.
he makes
but
Harry's scar hurt
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Right. I mean, McGonagall makes somewhat of a, she makes a good, she's a good sub character in there.
Yes,
Dumbledore shows up a little bit
from the
for, like, a
painting.
key part.
Yeah,
Yeah. But the thing that sets off everything is Amos Diggory, and that's Cedric's father. Sets off everything for it.
yes,
this whole story.
And what it is that the Time Turners have all been destroyed, but there's like one left, and I think Hermione, instead of destroying it, she hides it magically in a book, like she has like a spell or something on it to keep it safe in there or whatever. Um, and I think the kids overhear Cedric Diggory begging, not Cedric, sorry, Amos begging to borrow that time turner so he can go back in time and save Cedric, but she won't have it. She's like, no, you could ruin everything. And the kids overhear that conversation, right?
No, it's Amos that goes to Harry's house, I believe, or something like
Harry,
that.
that's right. That's right.
And it's Albus, his son, Harry's son, who overhears this, that he has a time turner that. So basically, basically Harry and Albus have like this like broken relationship as father and son, because his dad is Harry Potter. He just feels like he's not good enough, and he can't. He feels like he's just given like he can't live up to his dad's
Like
name.
he's living in
No
his
matter
shadow, basically.
Right, exactly, and he doesn't get out of it. The other two kids don't care, or deal with it a lot better, and it's because Albus is the firstborn, not to mention that he's named after Dumbledore and Severus. It's a lot of pressure on him to live up to all three of those names.
Right.
Being a Potter named after Albus and Dumbledore and named after Severus. So it's a lot of pressure on him. Him and Harry have a really broken relationship. And from that broken relationship, he thinks that he can save Cedric by using the time turner to fix one of his dad's wrongs. And that's where the story takes off from there. He thinks it's a good idea to go back in time to mess with time. And every time he tries to do something, he fucks something up.
Which is funny because when I started reading that, I was like, "Oh man, that's kind of a cool plot device there." So like they actually and they said like, "Oh, we need to go back to the Goblet of Fire, the tournament, the Triwizard tournament, and try to like stop him from winning to getting to the end, essentially."
Right.
And so the first thing they do is they try to mess him up in the dragon thing, but uh, he ends up passing that still somehow. I don't remember. And then like this, then they go back again to stop him in the water challenge, and that time they stop him, and he ends up like Cedric ends up turning into uh, because he
Death
lost the
Eater.
tournament. Yeah, because he lost the tournament, and he was so like people probably made fun of him. Like it kind of changed him, and he like became a Death Eater, and then
He ends up killing Neville Longbottom.
he ends up killing Neville, which Neville was essential in the Deathly Hollows book because he kills Nagini, the last Horcrux before Harry kills Voldemort. So by not killing Nagini, Voldemort stays alive, kills Harry Potter. So now there's no Harry Potter. There's no Albus. Ron and Hermione aren't married. In fact, Ron's married to Padma Patel or something like that, and Hermione's with somebody
Yeah,
else.
basically that's the Back to the Future where Biff becomes Donald Trump.
Yeah, exactly.
So
And Voldemort's running
everything's
around,
messed up.
and yeah,
Right.
Voldemort's running around, and Snape is still alive, and
What's her face? Professor Umbridge or Headmaster Umbridge is now running Hogwarts,
yes.
which I
So
can't stand that lady.
I
I
can't
know she
either.
doesn't exist. I know she doesn't exist, but I fucking hate her so much.
She did her job well.
Yeah. I hate that character so much.
Yeah.
And whoever I can't remember the name of the actress who played her right now, but she did such a good job because I fucking hate her too.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember her in the book going, "Oh, I hate this person," but then when that person came alive, on the screen, I was like, "Oh my god, like you captured that character so well that I hate you."
But basically, that's our favorite part, I guess. It was mine, and I just found out that it's yours. That when so basically it's Scorpius who is alive at this point. Albus doesn't even exist because Harry Potter dies.
Right.
So he goes to talk to Severus, who's still alive, and you think Severus now is, all this shit happened, Dumbledore, we lost, so now I'm full-fledged Death Eater. Well, no, his love of Lily is so much that he still is trying to fight the good fight for Lily.
Yes.
And that part just got to me so bad that it made Severus so much more than I could possibly think of a character.
Yeah, because
even
because
after
once
Harry's dead.
Right. And when Scorpius explains everything to him, he kind of takes it pretty well. And he's just like, well, then we got to do this. We need to fix the timeline. Like, I'll sacrifice. It's worth the sacrifice of my life than having Voldemort run around. And that
Right.
just, I was like, oh my God, like, you're a hero, dude. Like,
Yeah,
you're,
and then when like Hermione and Ron sacrifice themselves and they finally tell each other that they love each other, that part was awesome.
yes.
And then when Severus finally sacrificed himself, he uses the Patronus on the fuck, what's the name of those things? The
The
Dementors.
Dementors. Oh, and it's the
And it,
dough. It's Lily's
yeah,
dough.
oh my god,
Ah, that's so good. That's so fucking good, man.
fucking feels right there when I was reading that part.
Yes.
I can't believe I would love to know if J.K. Rowling had any input on that scene or any of Snape's dialogue.
It would make me happy if I knew that. I was kind of bummed that she didn't write this thing, but you know, you could kind of see her input in there somewhere. I think it was probably the guy's idea to go back to the tournament and do all that shit, but then you know, it really messed up the timeline, and it wasn't like when it messed up the timeline, it wasn't like really like over the top weird the shit that was happening. You know, it was kind of it was reasonable. I was like, okay, it wasn't like somebody just went way off the deep end or did something weird. It like really had an effect, and there was major consequences.
I loved how they explained what actually happened each time. Like it was really intricate, and like I'm wondering like that's another part where Rowling had an input because everything made sense of why they like every time they went back and screwed something up, they had to explain what had actually happened. And I loved that part too because you had to know Harry Potter's lore and canon to understand if okay, so if I did this in the past, this is what would happen. You know, or if I did like I loved that part. Like that's why I love like time traveling movies or if they get it right, that's why I love that type of thing. And it felt like Rowling had input on that too because if you didn't know the books really well, none of that would have made sense.
So the other character, I mean, it's a very minor thing, but like, so when the boys were trying to escape the Hogwarts train, remember that scene? And like, you come to find out that nobody's ever in the history of that train, you know, 200 years or whatever that train's been running, no one's ever escaped the train. And like the lady, the trolley witch, the chick that kind of comes around and gives everyone chocolate frogs and shit, you come to find out that she's a guardian of that train. She doesn't let anyone, like any kid, leave.
Yeah, she got it was pretty scary and freaky because I picture that lady in my head from the movie, and
Yes.
I
She had
pictured
like
her kind of
claws. She
go,
had claws and
yeah,
shit, and she
yeah.
had like, and she can turn the candy that she had like into bombs or into like weapons and shit. I was like,
Yeah,
what? I'm like, where is this coming from? This is bizarre. But they end up actually escaping. They actually end up getting out of the train and escaping, and um, that's when they went back in time the second time, right? And really jack things up to the point where I think they got stuck back in time at one point. Like they were literally stuck because they eventually find out that
it was.
this
Wasn't
girl
it stuck?
Delphi
No, no,
Diggory.
no,
Who,
no,
what?
no. That happened later. They got stuck. No, it was Scorpius who got stuck because Albus was written out of existence, right?
Right, right. There's that time, yes. There is that time where he got stuck, but he made it. I think he fixed. Didn't he fix something, and then he was able to? Yeah, yeah, yeah. They fixed the timeline, but
Right,
then
right, right.
and then they end up trashing that time turner, but somebody else had another time turner that they had constructed, and so Delphi, who is Amos Diggory's niece, supposedly, like she said, I'm the niece. I need, you know, we need to help Cedric and all that bullshit. But you come to find out that she was the daughter of a union between Voldemort and Bellatrix Lestrange, and so she decides to go back uh, even further and go back to the night that Lily and James were murdered by Voldemort, right? And she was going to go and stop Voldemort from making that mistake because he shoots it at Harry and it bounces back and kills him. So she tries to go there to stop him and have a different plan. And that was pretty emotional too, because Harry and Ron and those people, they got the other time turner or whatever, and they went back and they had, weren't they like basically Harry had to watch his parents die or like see it from afar or whatever, like see
Right.
see the yelling and the screaming and see the green light from the Vada Kedavra curse and all that shit. And so like that reminded me of the Flash big time. I was like, oh my god, like when the Flash had a chance to save his mom, then he doesn't. He tells I'm in that whole time conundrum, doesn't do it, and then like now he actually saves his mom, and there's going to be Flashpoint. That's crazy. But Harry has this opportunity to go save his parents, and he doesn't do it. He's like, no, it has to be this way. Everything has to like go the way it's supposed to go, otherwise it'll be jacked up even worse.
Right.
So I like that scene too. I like Severus' scene, and I like that scene. So yeah, there was like kind of a weird device where there were a couple a couple of time turners, like one I think Amos had, and then another one somebody else had. But the one that when the kids went back with Delphi in the past, it got broken or something like that. So the kids were stuck there, and they had to construct a note, or they did something. They wrote something on the blanket, right? And then Harry had the blanket in the future, and he actually happened to look at it, and that told him where they were, like at what point they were, and they were able to go back and save them. So that was pretty cool. I mean, that reminded me of some other movies that were. Oh, there was a time travel movie called Frequency. You remember that movie?
Yeah, the whole writing thing. It reminds me of that episode on the writing on the quilt or whatever, or the blanket. It reminds me of there was one episode in Legends of Tomorrow where they were stuck in
Oh
the past.
yeah, that's right. I forgot
And they
about
wrote
that too.
She wrote it on a helmet or something like that.
Yeah, and they, of course, you're banking on the on
Well,
luck.
In that show, she had I can't remember who actually wrote it on the helmet, but they had seen that helmet before in what's his face's office and on the ship.
Yeah,
So that's why she wrote it on there, so to know where they were. So,
gotcha.
but
Which that's Back to the Future 3. He gets the note from Doc telling him where the where the machine is.
right,
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, we're not doing this this story justice. I mean, if you've read it and you're listening to the podcast, you know what we're talking about. But if you're like lost, go read it. It is a good read, and the time traveling aspect of it is really fun, and it allows them to go back and visit characters that you wondered about or haven't seen in a while. Like Severus. You're sad that he's dead, but you get to go back and spend a little more time with them, and Albus, and you get to spend time with other characters you really liked. So I really liked that aspect of it.
what didn't you like?
Well, I didn't like how some of the characters ended up. I didn't like how Ron ended up being a, whatever, running a joke shop. I just thought that was hokey. Trying to think of what else. I would have expected to like visit Neville or visit some of the other Order of the Phoenix characters. Would have been pretty cool. But
Neville is only mentioned in passing.
right. But like, you don't hear about Mad Eye Moody or any of the other characters. Severus, what's his name? Sirius Black. That would have been emotional too if he went back and was able to talk to him. And but those are just nitpicky. I mean, I thought it was a little slow going in the beginning. I thought they really jammed it down your throat that Albus and Scorpius were best friends. I mean, every fucking second they're talking about it and hugging and,
I thought at one point in time they were going to be like boyfriends.
I
at one point in
kind of thought that because I don't remember Harry and Ron hugging all the time. I was like, this is kind of weird, but I would have been all right with that. I just thought it was weird that they had to mention to you 50,000 times that they're best friends, and I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. So the things I liked the most about were getting to obviously my favorite part was the Severus crap timeline, the really Back to the Future 2 timeline. I liked that scene at the death scene of the Potters that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But what I really had a problem with, and it was the same. It was the same as you, where you had a hard time getting into it in the beginning. It's because like I didn't in J.K. Rowling's novels, you get descriptions. You get when you get a new character, she describes that person to you, and you get a real feel for the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, because it's a play, I didn't really like either Albus or Scorpius until like 2/3 into the play, and I didn't understand their character or where they were coming from or their history. And I understand that in a play, you kind of just it's all visual and stuff like that. But I think that was the thing I didn't like them that I did not like the most, that it wasn't a novel, because I couldn't read into like who these new characters were, right?
Yeah,
Because like you see Albus for like 5 minutes in the movie. You read about him for like 10 pages in Deathly Hollows, and then he's gone. And then now all of a sudden you see him in this play, and then Scorpius is just new for this play.
right.
So um, he could not be further from like Voldemort's son in this play, because that was the rumor about him in the play. But again, I wish it was a novel, so I could have grown with this character the same that I grew with Ron and Hermione and Harry. That was the thing I didn't like the most.
I have to totally agree with you because I thought he was just a little asshole. I didn't like his character until way later in the play as well. And the one thing that the guy did do pretty well was you already knew who Draco was, you already knew who Harry was, and they have a story arc together. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah,
problems in their past, and but they resolve them by the end of the play. They kind of navigate through this shit, and then you eventually find out that Draco has always been jealous of Harry's friendships because he didn't have
oh
close friends like
yeah,
that.
I
You
love
know,
that part too.
it
I
was
really
really
like
that
that part
was
too.
so you're right. I mean, character development, because we know this character so well, that when that happened, you were like, oh, that's a great ending to that issue that's been going on for so long. That was a great, story arc for them, and they resolved it. But for the kids, you don't really know them all that well.
I thought that was really good too in the crap in the Back to the Future 2 timeline. I don't know why I keep doing that, but
Because it's true.
where goes to he goes to his father Draco, Scorpius does, and he tries to tell him that he's not from this time, and that he tries to tell him all this stuff, and even uses his mother to try to talk to it. And you see
Oh,
this like, and you go from like Draco, who is trying like not trying, but he basically turns into his father, right? A complete dick,
yes.
like in this timeline. But then he talks about the mother, and he realizes, and he talks about things that Draco never told anybody, and that only his wife would know about it. And his son now is telling him this, and he says something, and I'm paraphrasing it. He said Draco says to Scorpius like, "Just don't let anybody else know."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
yeah, you're right. I'm not a fraud, but like, I'm not as hardcore as you think. But just don't let anybody else know. Like, keep it between. And I'm not doing it justice, but it's a beautiful scene because you see that Draco always has this like light inside of him, and he uses that too. He says, "Your mother always brought the light in my darkness," and you always had a clue in the books that something was off, especially when Voldemort tells him to do the shit that he has to do
Half Blood Prince.
in the Half Blood Prince. You know that he's not like that. That he's just all fucking talk because he's a Malfoy, and he doesn't want to be that. And this play explores that a little bit more, and it's really great.
Yeah, they do a really good job of it, and it does have a resolution by the end. They end up actually burying the hatchet and moving on, and it's great. So it is like the play does a lot of things. I mean, it's about fathers and sons. It's about friendship. It's about parenting. I mean, there's a number of things that are going on, but it's this really cool time traveling, story, in that's kind of fueling the whole thing. So it's really cool. They really took their time and did some intricate things, with it, weaving in and out. And I mean, yeah, I mean, there might be some plot holes or whatever, nitpicking, but I thought overall, I thought it was a pretty decent story. The other thing that bummed me out, I'm kind of moving ahead a little bit, but J.K. Rowling, of course, said that there's not going to be any like this is the last story you'll ever see Harry Potter in. Which I don't know. She said that before, right? Like when the last book came out, she was like, "Yeah, Harry
She
Potter's
did.
done."
Technically, she didn't. She kind of stuck to her word because she didn't write this. So,
That's true.
so
Oh, you little
technically,
minx.
she's right. But when I was reading this and I knew that she said that there's going to be no more Harry Potter stories, I was kind of like, there's something here that you could expand on. If she wanted to explore these characters, she could do it. She
Yeah,
really
she
could.
could. She could. Um, she's busy doing the Fantastic Beats and where to find them, but I heard that she actually is writing those.
Yeah.
And actually writing the second one right now. That I guess everybody at Warner Brothers are just over the moon over the first movie. So, of course, I think they always say that, but
So let's get the boring stuff out of the way now that we put it at the end anyway. So it sold 2 million copies in one day because it's Harry Potter. And it sold out all the way, the play itself sold out all the way to 2017.
yeah, I just read, I think 2 days ago or a few days ago, they put on a sale another 250,000 tickets, which would go all the way to the end of 2017, and they sold out very quickly, and they're going on eBay for exorbitant amount of money.
So we can't do a diversity rating to this, um, but we can do a
Well,
regular rating.
based, yeah, it'd be really difficult, but based on the casting, like if you go, I think you can go online and see the actual pictures of all the people. The one thing that I do have to say, and I know this was a controversy in the beginning when they were casting, but when they made Hermione African American, people went in a fucking uproar, and I was like,
Well, she's not African American. She's
"What?"
British, so she's black.
Right? I. Oh yeah, you're right. British African, yeah, African British. But I was like, why are you getting so upset about that? She never like. I've even like gone back and read these books. I'm like, there's not one description of her that says that she's has to be white. There's none. Like they give a
Yeah.
description of Harry, they give a description of Ron very well.
Right.
Like when you watch the movie, you're like, that's fucking Harry and Ron. But they never really gave a description of Hermione. Um, like she's white and curly hair or this or that, black hair, whatever. They didn't. So like when that I was like, so fucking what? That's awesome. I'd want more diversity. There was a lot of diversity in those movies, I thought. But so I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd say Jan Brady did Plethora, but I don't know. I'd have to see it. But as far as like lightsabers, I think I'd give it 4. I think for
you're
me,
a
I'd
chainsaw.
shit. Edit that out. I would have to give it 4 chainsaws. I think I really did enjoy the book or the play. Sorry, I shouldn't call it a book. Everyone that pisses people off. 4 chainsaws for me. What about you?
I probably as a play I'd have to give it 4 lightsabers, but reading it as a book because that's how I read it. It'd probably be 3.5 because you have to remember it was sometimes it was a little difficult to follow because it was written as a play, so there's scenes that you have to read, like there's descriptions of scenes, but it's not a description like you would expect J.K. Rowling to do because it's a play.
Right.
So as a book, it's for me 3.5. As a play, I'd probably give it 4 if I was visually looking at it. The other thing I wanted to mention that I forgot is that while I was reading this, they were using like these special effects that were, or not special effects, but they were using these like things that were in the movie and were special effects. And I was like, how the hell are you going to pull that off in a play? So I would love to see the play to see how they would pull off these scene changes because there's a few scenes that come really quick and are over very fast that are done through special effects. So I'd be interested to see how they would do that live.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get to see it unless they travel around.
Yeah.
But this play is like unprecedented. It's selling tickets so quickly that it's very difficult to get a hold of them.
Yeah, it's not like the Spider-Man play.
Yeah. Oh gosh,
Nobody's gotten hurt.
yeah. Nobody died in Harry Potter. Nobody got hurt, got maimed. Yeah, I mean it's harder than getting tickets for the Super Bowl right now. It's difficult, but Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping if they ever travel over here. I mean, there was like a traveling Batman show that I caught one time, and there was some other stuff I think I saw that were not, normally American. They were overseas, but they traveled, and I was able to get tickets for it. So, who knows? But those, of course, I don't think they were the first rate actors for those either. I think they were just like a traveling show or whatever. But I don't know. I'd be very interested to see that too. I'm sure it's a very expensive production. I'm sure they don't do a lot of showings, because it'd be quite a bit of effects they got to do over and over and over again. So be really hard pressed to find out if we're ever going to get tickets to that thing. I don't think it's going to be like Cats where it's going to go for 20 years. It might go a couple of years and then end. So hopefully this is my hope. Okay, one of two things are going to happen for us. One, we're going to be able to see it if we either fly to London or it ends up on California at some point, or number two, they film it like they do with the Cirque du Soleil shows. If you can't go to a Cirque du Soleil show, you could buy a DVD and you can watch it. And a lot of plays are like that too, and operas and things like that. So I'm hoping one of the two things happen.
Or they waited another 10 years and they film it as a movie with the original cast.
Yeah, which...
Oh, actually, they can't. Fuck.
No, they wouldn't be able to...
Severus and Alan Rickman died.
Yeah, all hopes of that would be, pretty dashed. That makes it... fuck, you made me even more sad now, you bastard. No, the actress is still alive. I think she's still doing TV shows overseas. Yeah. Maggie Smith. She's famous.
Yeah. That's our first book review.
Yeah, that was our first book / script review, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Again, if you hadn't read it and you're listening to all these spoilers, whatever, read it. It's a very quick read. I enjoyed it. Those of you that did read it, it's up and down. It's like 50-50. Some people loved it, some people hated it. But I think majority of people loved it. I think the majority of the people that hated it didn't understand what it was supposed to be. So, but that's on you. but I enjoyed it.
How can you be a Harry Potter fan and not know that she didn't write it, first of all, and second of all, it's a play?
They've only been talking about it for a year, so I don't know where you crawl out of that rock and whatever. But that's our first book review. I might have another book review coming soon that we might add to another podcast later on, but I'll mention that later. We got a few things cooking and in the fire right now, but for now, that is episode number 40 of Chew on This, a Nerds United podcast. I'm BJ.
Vic.
Chew on that, folks. Till next time.
Later.